Welcome to the Wrestling with Success podcast. In this show, you'll learn how to use lessons used in sports so you can use failure as your secret weapon for success and succeed in the real world. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, husband, father, adventure seeker, and entrepreneur, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Success. Today I bring you Niyi Sobo. Niyi is a former NFL running back for the New Orleans Saints. He was a Division I All-American in college, playing for both Portland State and Oregon State. He's now a mindset and peak performance coach for athletes and high performers, helping them, quote, build supreme confidence and dominate under pressure. He's the founder of I'mNotYou.com and the host of the Sports Motivation Podcast. Niyi is a husband and a father of 5. Now, if you don't have time to listen to the entire episode, or if you hear something you like, but you don't have time to jot it down, be sure to grab your free copy of the action plan from this episode and every episode by going to jimharshawjr.com/action. Niyi, welcome to the show.
What's going on, man? I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming. It's heard a lot about you. Got to chat with you a couple times. Read about your background. And I see what you're doing now. Pretty cool stuff. Let's start with this, Niyi. Tell the listener about your background in sports.
Man, so I grew up in the great Northwest, Portland, Oregon, and I grew up in a soccer family. My dad came here when he was 18 from Nigeria, and we're a big soccer family, but I fell in love with football at 7th grade. When I was playing soccer, man, I went through a chubby stage and I hated running. You know what I mean? I was running over kids on the soccer field. So I decided to play football, man, and I just fell in love. It was like I just loved it, and I didn't know anything about football. I didn't have a TV growing up, so it wasn't like I knew about teams or anything like that, or didn't even have a favorite player. But I love football, played it throughout high school, and then got a chance to walk on when I was at Oregon State. So if anybody doesn't know what a walk-on is, it's kind of like you're an unpaid intern, like it's pretty low on the totem pole. And so I like worked my way up there and earned myself some playing time and got a pretty significant role on the team as a walk-on, but never was given a scholarship. And I had my first son while I was a sophomore in college. I was 20 years old. And I just decided, man, I wanted to have a bigger role on a team, and I wanted to get a scholarship. You know what I mean? I just felt like that was what I really wanted. A lot of people told me that I should stay at Oregon State, and that was a great opportunity to stay there. But ultimately, I reached out to some coaches at Portland State and some other schools, and Portland State gave me a full ride scholarship. Wow. Just by reaching out to them and emailing them. And so I headed over to my hometown, Portland State, and was really excited to be there. But the first year there didn't really work out for me as well. And still things weren't really working out how I originally planned them. But my senior year is when things really started to take off, and I had a breakout season. It was then that I became an All-American there in my last season, got attention from a lot of scouts. And ultimately that earned me a spot on the New Orleans Saints as a rookie free agent coming out of college. And again, there I was low on the totem pole as well, rookie free agent, similar thing to being a walk-on. But I earned myself a starting role on the New Orleans Saints during, I think it was a 2008 season, and then played there for 2 seasons. And ultimately, career got cut short due to injury, and had a bunch of shoulder injuries while I was there. And they ended up winning the Super Bowl. I got cut in the middle of that season. Oh. So imagine how devastated I was watching that Super Bowl, watching them hold up the trophy, while I'm at home. But it was a really tough time. But looking back, it was one of the coolest experiences of my life playing professional ball, just being able to take that dream and make it reality, man. And it was awesome. But after that, I sort of wandered around, didn't really know what I was doing, and then found myself starting to train athletes. And ultimately, I developed a real passion for the process of what it takes to go from, having this dream, these goals of wanting to, play at the highest level, and then showing athletes what it really looks like from a mental standpoint to really develop yourself and develop that confidence in order to be able to accomplish those goals. And so that led me to what I'm doing right now with I'mNotYou.com, like you said, where I help athletes build that supreme confidence that's required for them to really dominate under pressure. And I do that by helping them develop a dominant mindset. And so that's sort of my history as an athlete.
So I want to share with the listener just a quick story about what you said, because a lot of times we feel like a failure is an ending when a lot of times we don't realize that it's a beginning. Everybody knows about the Miracle on Ice. 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. We beat the Russians. Huge upset. Greatest upset in Olympic history. Well, a lot of people don't know that the last time that we beat the Russians in the Olympics was in the 1960 Olympics. Prior to that, and there was a guy who was cut from the team. The very last guy cut from the team. Imagine being that guy in 1960. You're the last guy cut from the team. They go out and they beat the Russians. Big deal. It was a huge upset then too. And that individual, that guy, actually happened to be watching the game with his dad when we had beat the Russians in 1960. And his dad looked at him and said, "Well, I guess they cut the right guy." And I mean, talk about devastating, right? Talk about,
right.
This is your, you actually, yours wasn't a failure so much. It was, you had an injury and you got cut. But this individual, you think like that's how devastating that is. Well, 20 years later, when the U.S. Olympic hockey team beat the Russians again, can you guess where that guy was? He was sitting on the bench as the head coach. He was the head coach of the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. It was Herb Brooks. Herb Brooks was actually cut from the team in 1960, so he didn't even make the Olympic team that year. So you never know when your greatest failure, your greatest adversity can become the biggest driver for you to do bigger and better and greater things in the world later on. I think you're doing that with your podcast and with I'mNotYou.com. So tell me more about what you do and how you work with athletes through I'm Not You.
Right. So my main way of communicating with athletes is through my podcast. Now I have a sports motivation podcast, but what I do basically is teach athletes how to think. And that's what I think is the most important. I believe that your beliefs, your reality as you see it, what you think about leads to how you feel, your emotions, and your emotions lead to the actions that you take. And the actions ultimately lead to the results. And so I feel like a lot of athletes focus purely on the actions. They say, what do I have to do, right? They're always looking for the latest workout routine, the new diet, new piece of equipment that's going to help them, gain X amount of inches on the vertical or, lift these amount of pounds. But what they really need to focus on, and not that those things don't need to be focused on, but what I find is that when you start to identify how you should think and how you should approach a certain topic or a certain circumstance, that leads to the right action. You know what I mean? And there is no quote unquote right action, but it makes you way more resourceful and way more creative in your approach and how you go about solving problems. Because we know that, how many athletes out there or coaches, you have this idea for something that you want, you set the goal, but it almost never works out that way. So you have to be extremely creative. And so I teach them how to think. I teach them how to, how to condition themselves mentally so that they're able to deal with these challenges and inevitable obstacles that come along the way.
That's something I really didn't get much experience with until later in my college career. I finally started working with a sports psychologist, and the mental side of athletics is so important. And we train so much on the physical side, but we rarely train on the mental side of things. And once I finally had a sports psychologist, a coach for my mental game, I made a huge leap. And probably the most important thing is I had a ton more fun. I had so much more fun competing. I broke through these barriers, and I stopped. I basically took my foot off the brake, and I competed at the highest level that I'd ever competed at before in my career. So it's such a great thing that you're doing for athletes, and you've obviously competed at the highest level, so you know what it takes, not only physically, which there's a lot of people I think that know how to get there to do the physical things, but the mental side of it is just so important.
Right.
So how do we take this, Niyi? How do we take this and translate this for the listener? So the listener is a former athlete. They're an executive, they're a manager, they're a teacher, they're a high school coach. How do we translate this into real world stuff for them to use? So, you talk a lot about on your website, in your content about confidence, right? Building supreme confidence.
Right.
Why is it important? And so this is maybe a two-part question. Why is it important? And how do we, former athletes, actually how do you create confidence to achieve success in the real world?
Man, that's a great question. And there are a bunch of ways, but I'm going to get to the one thing that I believe that has the biggest impact and leads and has a cascading effect on pretty much all the other aspects of your life. And So like we hear a lot about confidence and, you should, take action, right? Put your chest out, act confident. And all these things are very, very important. But what I found for me, the thing that was the biggest game-changing factor for me in developing confidence was having what I call a reality check. All right. So a lot of people are out of tune with reality. And what I mean by that is there's these things in our lives that we don't like, that we're not satisfied with. But out of fear of pain, and the desire to be comfortable, we avoid those things and we don't talk about them, and we avoid having conversations about it with people that we love. We avoid looking into answers on how to solve them because it's uncomfortable. So you have to have a reality check. You got to say, like, where am I at in my life right now? What's not the way that I want it? What sort of things have I been settling on? What am I scared of? What are my deepest fears? What sort of vices do I use to cover up these fears? A lot of us go to food. Some people it's alcohol. Some people it's working out. It's a bunch of different things. Some people it might be their work. But having what I call a reality check. So get with people that and ask them how you show up to them. What are your strengths as they see them? What are their weaknesses? And sort of get an idea for what are the things in your life that you don't really like right now. And then you start to create a new vision for it after that. Create a vision of how you would like it. That is a huge key in developing confidence. If I meet someone, it doesn't matter if I'm an athlete or whoever, and a lot of people complain, right? They have things that they don't like. But if I ask you, what's your goal? What are your goals? What is your ultimate vision? What is the purpose for your life? And you don't know, that's a main reason why a lot of athletes and a lot of people in general don't have confidence. And especially for former athletes whose identity was so tied up in their sport. And then after the sport, it's like they have no idea. I spent 3 years wandering after I was done playing football and had no idea what I wanted to do. And that was the source of my lack of confidence. When I started getting a clear picture for what it is that I wanted to do, and it started to crystallize even more and more, then I have some clarity. Then I have some purpose about what I'm doing, and then I can move with a sense of purpose in what I'm doing. So I think having that reality check, doing what I call ruthless self-evaluation, again, is another really big confidence builder. At the end of the day, you have to sort of detach yourself from your ego consistently, because if you don't, it will always creep up. So here's how you know if you have a weak ego. Do you get really, really nervous when you get feedback? Do you get really defensive when people tell you things about yourself that you know are true? Do you avoid those things that you know are true? Do you avoid things that you're really not good at, that you could and should be good at? I'm not talking about in the sense of, weaknesses that you don't necessarily need to pay attention to, because we know we need to build our strengths, but are you avoiding things? And so having what I call ruthless self-evaluation and evaluating yourself objectively, consistently, so as to consistently improve, that builds so much confidence. And that's legit confidence. That's more than just saying walk out there, and smile and act like you're confident, which again is valuable. But I'm saying if you want to get to the core and have a lasting confidence, you have to be deeply in touch with reality. And reality is what is your current reality? What are your set of circumstances right now in your life that you don't like? And what are you going to do about them? And when you start working towards those, you start to develop what I call a killer instinct type of confidence.
Man, ruthless self-evaluation. I love it. I love it. It's asking yourself the right questions. You just rattled off a bunch of the, quote, right questions. And for the listener, I'm going to have all these questions that he just rattled off. I'm going to put those all in the action plan. So just jimharshawjr.com/action. And I'll put all those ruthless self-evaluation questions in the action plan there for you. And it's so important. You mentioned clarity. You mentioned after you're done with your NFL career, you wandered around basically for a couple of years, and but it took you a while to get that clarity and purpose. You use those two words, clarity and purpose, and that is the number one, obstacle. It's number one area that the listeners that I talk to want to improve in their life. They don't have that clarity of purpose, and that leads to a lack of focus. That leads to unproductivity. They're not productive at work. They stay busy. You talked about, they do these things to stay busy. They just kind of work, or
right.
They go work out, or they eat food or drink alcohol, whatever it is, we bury it, but it's like, you've got to get that clarity in that vision. And once you do, that's when you start saying, okay, I've got to stop doing this. Maybe it's drinking alcohol. Maybe it's playing video games. Maybe it's, surfing on the internet or whatever, a million other things you can be doing that is a waste of time. And some of those things might actually be productive. I actually talked to a guy a couple of days ago who he's an avid cyclist, and it's his sort of passion for that is stopping him from getting the job he wants. And so he came to the realization that passion, which is healthy, actually needs to probably move to the back burner so he can get the job that he wants to, so that he can achieve that purpose, so he can live that purpose, live that ideal life. So let me ask you this, Niyi, how did that happen? How did you eventually come to that clarity, arrive at what your purpose is? I mean, did you work with a coach? Did you do your own ruthless self-evaluation? What was that process like for you? And how can the listener maybe do some of those?
Great question, man. So I'm going to basically give you some core principles that you can apply to help achieve clarity and start to get some momentum in your life. And I'll give you some examples of how that looked like for me. So after I was done playing ball, I was working at a job. It was actually a factory job. And it was funny because it wasn't something I was trying to do for a long time, but it paid pretty well, relatively speaking. And I thought that I was going to be able to get back in the league, but I ended up working there for way longer than I thought. And while I was doing that, I had no idea what I was doing, right? And I was just wandering around doing random things and not waking up feeling excited at all. So one of the biggest shifting points for me was having a mentor, all right? So that is why having a coach, some sort of mentor, a live mentor, right, is critical. I had a guy whose son I was training that developed a liking to me, and he just invested in me, and he would call me to his office every week, and he would show me new books, and he would start to, expose me to things that I had not yet been exposed to. So if you are in a situation right now where you lack clarity, don't expect to get clarity staying in your same environment. Like, you have to have someone else outside of yourself, outside of your own head, that can start to expose you to some new information. So that's one, get a mentor. The second is reading. Like, when I tell you literally, like, books that cost $10 have literally changed my life, and that's why I'm such an avid reader. I read all the time. I have books all around the house. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'm going to be reading. I've now implemented a habit of reading while I brush my teeth as well. But you got to be constantly filling your mind with new information, constantly. And what this does is this. It gives you new ideas. It shows you what's possible. It challenges previously held beliefs, right? So if you have this belief that, oh, this is hard or I can't do that, you're reading a biography of somebody who did something way harder than you ever did, went through things that were way tougher than what you're going through, and now puts things into perspective. So you got to read books. And second is you have to establish a new target and decide on the target, all right? So you have to start valuing clarity over certainty. There's a great book by Patrick Lencioni. I think he has a bunch of books, and I think it was in this one called The 5 Temptations of a CEO. And he talked about one of the problems that CEOs have, and replace CEO with leader, with man, with anyone who is trying to do something significant, is that they value certainty, being sure that something's going to work out over clarity. So if they don't have certainty, then they won't make a decision, right? It's like, I'm sure you probably had that. It's like, you're not sure what to do, and so you end up just not making a decision, and you just think about it all day. Decide, be clear, because you get better at making decisions by making decisions. You get better at shooting shots by shooting shots. And by learning from all your misses, from all your quote unquote mistakes, you'll get better. So you can't get better if you don't make decisions. So decide on an area to go. So for a lot of guys post-career, they're wondering and they're waiting for the right thing to pop up. That's not going to happen. I started training athletes. Now, I don't train athletes anymore, but I would have never got to where I'm at right now. I would never have the clarity that I have right now if I didn't first train athletes. At one point, I was not training athletes. I was training like ladies and things like that. Like, I remember my daughter's babysitter wanted me to train her, and I started training her. I trained her for like 3 weeks, and I was like, wow, I'm never doing this again. Now, if I didn't do that, I would never know, right? And so through action, through momentum, you gain clarity. You don't gain clarity by sitting down thinking and just having an idea pop in your head. So take action. So start the business. If it doesn't work out in a couple months or after 6 months, say you're going to evaluate it and then move on, and then mine gold, look at for what you learned through it, and then apply it to whatever else you do next. That's how you gain momentum. But a lot of people have this idea that you have to know, we're never going to know what's going to work out or not. You're never going to know. So I became a firefighter. I decided that I was going to become a firefighter. And that's one of the decisions I made after I was reading all these books and started getting inspired. And I was like, all right, I'm going to be a firefighter. And I did all the things that my mentor told me to do. And I became a firefighter in less than 6 months, when that's a job that takes on average 7 years to become. And I had zero experience doing it. And it was an incredible incredible experience. And it proved to myself so much, right, about how much was possible. I'm no longer a firefighter. I just recently quit my job, or retired early 2 months ago, so that I can do what I'm doing full time. So some people would say, oh, you were only a firefighter for 3 years. Like, was that a waste of time? Or, was that a quote unquote failure? Absolutely not. I learned so much through that experience, and I gained clarity by going through that. So not being afraid to quote unquote fail. Like, I actually don't believe in failure. I literally don't believe in failure. The only way that I'm going to fail is if I just quit altogether. You know what I mean? To just quit on life. But as long as I'm living, there's really no failures. There's only results. It's like a scientist. He doesn't consider an experiment a failure. He learns from whatever, he has an hypothesis. Like, if I do this, then this will happen. He analyzes the results, and then he goes back to the drawing board and keeps moving and keeps moving. He doesn't sit and theorize about everything and then be nervous about whether or not he's going to do the experiment. So get yourself a mentor, read tons of books, get your hands on as many books and audio programs as you can, overwhelm your subconscious with new information, and establish a new vision and some goals, and just move and consistently evaluate yourself. Look at your results. Say, okay, is this working? Is this not working? Monitor your emotions. How am I feeling? And I feel like if I would have had that advice right post NFL, I mean, I don't know. I don't like to play that game, but, let's just say I'd be a lot farther along right now. You get what I'm saying? And that's okay. But it's like how fast I've moved in a year alone. Like, I started I'm Not You last May, and the things that I'm able to do right now, my podcast, started in, November, and hit over 150 downloads a month ago. And I didn't even know that was a good thing or not. I was new to podcasting, but how fast things can move for you if you just commit and decide what you're doing and just move aggressively forward. And I'm telling you, it's fun, and you'll have a lot of energy, and a lot of people will want to be around you, and you will be a leader.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. So for listener, hit rewind on your podcast player right now and listen to that whole thing again, because that was awesome. I'm going to summarize that again in the action plan, but that was Niyi. That was awesome stuff. One of the things I want to sort of reflect on is make a decision. Make a decision and then adapt. A lot of people are afraid to make a decision because they feel like it's final. They're afraid to make a decision to become a firefighter because they think that that's what they have to do for the next 40 years until they retire. Well, that's not the case. Yeah. You can set a goal, and you can act on that goal, and you can execute, and then guess what? Different opportunities might come up, or different information might come in that makes you adapt or adjust or change. I was talking to a guy just a couple of days ago who really successful guy, and I said, man, how did you end up where you are now? And he's like, I would have never planned it this way. He's like, I had a plan, and I just executed on that plan, and one thing led to another, and to another, and to another, and here I am. And it's a matter of putting one foot in front of the other. Make a decision, take action. And I've said this before, but you can't stumble into something unless you're moving forward. You've got to be moving forward. And that vision that you have for your life is hopefully something that sticks for the next 40, 50, 60 years. But you know what? It might not. And that's okay. That's okay. Decide, take action, and adapt as the time goes on, as new information comes in.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
All right, so reading while brushing your teeth. You did say you read while you brush your teeth.
Yep.
Let me hear. Tell me about that. I want to read while I'm brushing my teeth.
So when I was a firefighter, actually, I read a lot more than I do now. Like, I whipped through books a lot quicker because I had a lot of downtime at the fire station, et cetera. But when I recently quit, or retired, I should say, I wasn't reading as much, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, all right, like I need to get more reading in, and so I'm looking at all the different times a day where it's downtime or it's dead time, And I used to have this idea when reading where I had to finish the whole book, right? But there's a guy I follow, Ty Lopez, online. You guys should follow him. He's awesome. And he reads a book a day. And he has this method that he talks about how he reads, where he doesn't necessarily read through the whole book. He just basically mines for gold in a book, right? He'll explore a book a day, right? And so so anyway, I was just trying to figure out, like, instead of having this mindset, like, I have to finish and complete a whole book, it's like, how can I extract information quicker, right? So I literally just implanted books in different areas of the house. In every bathroom in the house, there's a book that I've strategically placed there that is relevant to my life. So when I'm taking a dump downstairs, there's a book that I explore, and it might last 5 to 10 minutes. I'll get 10, 20 pages in sometimes just on the toilet while I'm brushing my teeth. I have a book on finances that I'm looking through, just learning just new things, new information that I don't know. That's 2 minutes, and I might get through 2 or 3 pages, and not reading it all the way through, but just mining for stuff on those pages. And just think of that, all the information compounded over time. You brush your teeth twice a day. That's 4 to 5 minutes a day brushing your teeth. That's 4 to 5 minutes of reading every day. After a week, that's 35 minutes. I mean, do the math, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just this idea that athletes who have killer instinct are aggressive learners. And when I talk about killer instinct, what this looks like for you as post-athlete is that you are living your life in the way that Steph Curry and LeBron James approach their sport. Yeah. And how awesome would that be to be an absolute killer? And I say that, and you know what I mean when I say that. Yep. To be playing at the highest level, to be in the zone, fully present, and playing just as you were supposed to, like an animal in the jungle. You know what I mean? Like living like a lion in the jungle, not in the zoo, but in the jungle, really living the way that God intended you to live. And so they learn aggressively. And so I realized that if I want to move fast, if I want to reach my goals in the time period that I say, then I need to push myself. I need to learn quicker. So I'm listening to things all the time. When I do my chores in the house, we have a big house. I mean, we have 5 kids, and we don't make the kids do the chores. We all divvy up the chores together. When I'm washing the dishes, I'm listening to my audios. I'm listening to an audio book. And this is all just a way for me to learn quicker. The goal should be to pick up information fast so that you can move on it. So think about whatever you're struggling with in life right now. Is it relationships? Is it your health? Is it business? Is it marketing in your business? Maybe you have a cool business idea. You don't know how to execute it. Identify what that is. Get a book in it. Go on Amazon, find the best book on the topic at hand. So health, wealth, whatever, fitness. Get it and read it and soak up that information as fast as you can. Say, how can I get this information and apply it quickly? It's not for the sake of just amassing knowledge. It's for the sake of amassing knowledge so that you can use it, so you can add it to your arsenal. So now I've overwhelmed myself with so many new ideas and thoughts that I'm able to talk about them, and they just fire off without me having to think about it. And that's what happens over time. Now imagine 10 years, after all the books that I've read, the knowledge that I'll have and the wisdom that I'll have and the experience that I'll have as a result of me taking action from reading these books. So I'll challenge anyone out there who says that they don't have time to read. I'm going to call BS on that. You have time to read. You drive in a car, you brush your teeth, you go to the bathroom, you wait in line at the grocery store. My kids always laugh. I carry a book in my back pocket, a small enough book. You know what I mean? I'll put it in my back pocket while I go wait at the dentist or whatever. So just find time to learn and do it in an aggressive way.
It's interesting. There's a quote that I've said several times on this podcast by Dr. Bob Rotella. He's a world-renowned arguably, and he's been called the number one sports psychologist on the planet. He actually lives in Charlottesville, and he works with our golf team, and golfers fly in from all over the world to spend time with him. But he said, if you want to be extraordinary, you can't do what everyone else does. If you want to be extraordinary, you can't do what everyone else does. So for the listener, when you hear somebody like Niyi say, I keep a book in every room in his house, and he reads constantly, like, that's kind of crazy, right? It's kind of like, who does that? Who does that? Who does, Kyle Dake, for the listener, a lot of listeners might know who Kyle Dake is. He was a wrestler, 4-time national champion, first one ever to do it in 4 different weight classes. He wrote his goals down every morning and every night his freshman year. And then his sophomore year, he wrote them down twice in the morning, twice at night. Junior year, 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night, and then 4 times and 4 times his senior year. And it's like, who does that, right?
Right.
Well, guess what? Successful people do it. Who does the kind of work that Steph Curry does? Well, Steph Curry was doing the work that took him to the level of playing that he got to long before anybody knew he was doing the work. he's winning championships and awards and accolades when nobody's watching, right?
Mm-hmm,
it's not sexy.
mm-hmm.
It's not glorious. It's not fun. It's not glam. Like, nobody's looking. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. And we hear our coach tells us this when we're in sports, right? We hear these things from the greats in athletics, but we don't have somebody telling us that in our lives, right? So that's why I think we're getting a mentor comes in, hiring a coach, joining a mastermind group. And for the listener, if you want to get an awesome 10-page ebook on how to create your own mastermind group in 30 days or less, it's a step-by-step how to create a mastermind group. It's just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. You'll get access to that as well. But you've got to have the right people around you. And reading books, for me, Niyi, it's so important to constantly be feeding the right content into my mind. And a lot of times, like, I'll read something or I'll listen to a podcast or an audiobook, and it's like on something that I already feel like, I'm very comfortable in the subject and pretty knowledgeable about it. But it's like a different look on it. It's a different spin, or it gets me thinking. And I'm constantly writing down ideas, and I use Google Docs to capture a lot of my ideas. I think a lot of people use Evernote, but I capture all these ideas, and man, it's powerful to get your mind thinking. Other than, and the other option, the other choice is, listen to, I don't know, ESPN radio on your drive to work. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with listening to Mike and Mike on your drive to work. And I like to do it sometimes, but I tell you what, you got to do different things if you want to get different results. So
exactly. I love it. Well said, man. I mean, that's heavy, dude. Like what you just said right there, because that's something we all need to be reminded about. Because even myself, like, I'll look and say, okay, this is the result. And I have like this exercise that I do. Just take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the right hand, just write out what it is that you say that you want, right? Like you say, everyone says they want lots of energy. They want a great relationship with their wife. They want great relationships with their kids. They want to make a lot of money. They want to be able to travel. They want to make money while they're sleeping. All these things that everyone says that they want. They want to be happy. They want to be wealthy, all these things. And then on the left-hand side, write down what you do every day. And that is your current strategy. So whatever you do every day, that's your current strategy right now for how to get these things on the right-hand side. And look at that and say, okay, am I going to ever get this on the right-hand side doing this? Because most of the time what's on that left-hand side is what everyone else does, right? Like it's like everyone wakes up, whenever they wake up and does this and listens to Mike and Mike and, eats, French fries and burgers and drinks a beer when they get home and, gets tired so they forget to do it. No, you need to do some crazy stuff. And that's what the whole I'm not you mentality is about. Because I realized that's the mentality that got me all of the success that I got. And also when I didn't get success, when I did it, experience failures and setbacks, quote unquote, that was when I didn't have that mentality. The mentality is that I'm willing to do what you're not. I'm not you. So I'm a part of the 2%. So most people say, 98% of businesses fail after X amount of years. Marriages fail after, 1 out of 2 marriages. I'm not you, so I'm not getting a divorce. Me and my wife going to be happy, and I'm going to do whatever is possible for that to happen. I'm not about to fail. My business is not failing. I promise you that. So that's the level of certainty that you can get when you start exercising these habits that we've been talking about.
All right, so let's talk about that. You mentioned failure or setbacks. And I know it sounds like you don't like the word failure, and I can relate to that. It's not really a failure if you're learning from it. People look at a guy like you're Division I All-American athlete. You played in the pros. You became a firefighter. You mentioned, it takes years to do the training. You did it in less than a year or 6 months, I think you said. And now you got this cool business and you're doing, it's amazing, right? You got an awesome family and wife and kids. Like, everything's good for you, right? Everything must be easy for Niyi. Tell us about a time that you failed, a time that you felt just hopeless. Can you take us to that moment? And then can you tell us how you got through it and were able to succeed either despite it or maybe even because of it?
Absolutely, man. Well, first off, let me start by saying, right now, like when you live life at a high standard, like, and it doesn't mean that I never take time to quote unquote smell the roses. I do it every day, but I don't consider my life to be, perfect or that I've accomplished so much. I've been able to do a lot of the cool things that a lot of people have not been able to do, but I don't really look backward in that way. You know what I mean? So I kind of want to say that, but in terms of my failures and things like that, man, I've had many of those times. Let's think about a time in particular, man. I think one of the toughest times was, again, when I got released from the New Orleans Saints, and I had the injuries, came back to Portland, and had no idea what I was doing. And recently had a pretty bad breakup with the mother of my sons, and I'm not going to go into detail what happened there, but let's just say it was a pretty classic, it was a bad situation. It was a tough thing to go through, and I really had no idea how to deal with it, and that was really tough. And I alluded to the things that got me through that. Earlier we're talking about having a mentor and things like that, but specifically, I'm going to go into marriage because I know there's a lot of guys listening that have wives, and a lot of former athletes who are wired a certain way that have wives, right? And it's a struggle and have a young family. When I got married to my wife is amazing. First of all, when I got married to her, I didn't even realize, she had a kid and I had 2 kids. So now we have 3 kids that we've had from previous relationships. And then we get together and we have 2 more kids. So now we have a total of 5 kids. So imagine the different challenges, right? Let's just talk about kids getting along with one another, different cultures and different families, different cultures that me and my wife came from, different belief systems, all these things. Then imagine me, a young, ambitious guy who's like trying to take over the world, right? And of course, that takes a lot of time and energy. So I'm going after my goals full speed. Now I got 5 kids who demand and need attention from me, right? And who deserve it. I have a wife who demands and needs attention from me as well. So needless to say, it is very, very difficult for me to, quote unquote, keep everyone happy. And even that belief alone, right, the idea that I have to keep everyone happy got me into a lot of trouble. And it's something that still creeps up from time to time. So the struggles that me and my wife had early in our marriage, man, were really, really tough to deal with. We're talking about like not really knowing if I'm even fit for marriage, like where I actually wondered, like, am I even built for this? You know what I mean? Like, can I even... And then thinking about what a failure I would be to my kids. That's actually something like I would like. I dread that. I do fear that. Not making it work with my wife and not being able to have my kids see their mom and dad together. You know what I mean? That's something that I have a lot of fear around, even still to this day. And so that's a huge challenge for me. And we went through a really rough time in our marriage early in our marriage. We haven't, quote unquote, like, it's not like there's never any problems, but we're to a point now where our level of commitment to one another is so heavy, so deep, and we are strong, and I say we as in like me and my wife together, we're really strong, and my wife is tough as nails and she's sweet as candy is at the same time. You know what I mean? And she's amazing, man. But I just know that a lot of guys are dealing with that. I actually have an episode that I did, on that, and I have a resource that I can share with the audience on how to build a mastermind alliance with your wife, actually, which is something that when I did with my wife that helped tremendously. So that was a period of time for me that was really, really tough, where it just felt like a lot of pressure, and I had to basically either fold or step up. I chose to step up. It doesn't mean that it doesn't still get really, really hard. Even today, me and my wife, we're having some tough conversations about some things surrounding our kids and different challenges that go on with our kids. They all have their own separate things that their own lives and their own, rate of growing and everything that happens with them individually. So it is a challenge, man. But like Jim, like how you teach, like you have to now, and it's a training, you have to habitually train yourself this way. And I do it daily, morning and night, because I have what I call blueprint, where I write in my journal and I identify obstacles and challenges, and I deliberately convert them into something positive daily. So morning and night, daily, every single day, I'm taking something that seems to bother me and I'm converting it into something and looking at it in a way that can benefit me. And what happens is after a while, this starts to become your normal way of thinking. And then you literally start to feel unstoppable, like where you feel like nothing can hurt you. And when I say that, it means even if something does hurt you, you know that you're going to come out better from it. So therefore, you can't lose. And that's the belief system that I help athletes develop. And that I feel like has helped me so much, where I can have situations in my life that don't always feel good, but in the back of my head, it feels good because I know that I'm learning from it. I'm going to be better. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. And you only can really relate once you start doing this. So start putting the things I've been talking about into practice, and we'll be able to relate on a deeper level. Maybe you come back and listen to this episode again, and you'll understand it in a different way. And Jim, I know you know what I'm talking about. It's a whole new way of living, and you'll start to feel really powerful.
For the listener, man, I know that you think I plant these comments by the guests, but I don't, man. It's amazing, like Niyi. So maybe every single one, or if not everyone, darn close to every one of my guests who are just uber successful people, but they have that thing that they do every day, that is a pause, that is reflection, that is identifying how the day went or what their goals are for today or tomorrow. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to see that in action, to see how many people, there are guys like you that do stuff like that. And I want the listener to really reflect on what Niyi talked about. Like, yeah, everything looks great for a lot of other people. The guy down the road, the guy down the hall, the guy in the office down the hall, everything looks great for everybody else but me, but you, right? But it's like, man, it's hard. It's hard for everybody, right? Even for the guy who's got it all together, looks like he's got it all together, man. It's hard. It's hard. It's a grind. It's not easy. And if you want to get to where you want to go, it's not going to be easy once you get there. Like once you get there, it's still going to be hard. It's still going to be a grind, But you might as well go for it, and you might as well try to create that life that you want, even though it's going to be a grind when you get there, because that's what you want, right? That's your passion. That's where you want to be. You want to have that good marriage. You want to be healthy. You want to have the money. You want to have the things. You want to have self-growth, personal growth. Those are the things that we want. Yeah, man, I don't know. That was pretty cool to hear you say that, Niyi.
I appreciate that, man.
All right, so let's get to some action items here. The listener likes to have something that they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours, some action they can take to help them start move toward achieving their goals. And maybe it's doing just what you said, which is that reflecting every day on something that was hard, that bad that happened, and turning it into a positive. But what would you recommend?
Man, I would recommend doing a reality check. So like I said, grab a piece of paper. I'm not going to make it difficult or say you got to download anything. Just grab a regular piece of paper, flip it, hamburger style, draw a line down the middle. On the right-hand side, write down everything.
I just learned that yesterday, by the way. There's hamburger and there's hot dog.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
Literally, my son's like, I fold a hamburger style. I'm like, what do you mean? So for the listener, that means like you fold it so it's like thicker versus up and down hot dog.
Right,
okay,
right.
Good, sorry.
And draw a line down the middle. On the right-hand side, write everything that you say that you want, all right? So think in terms of family, money, success, achievements, whatever is important to you. Write it down and write it clearly. And set the bar high. Only you know what you really want. So nothing, annoys me more than when the guys try to act like they don't really want something when they really do. If you want a lot of money, then write down how much money you want. If you don't, that's fine. But write down what you want on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, write down everything you're currently doing on a day-to-day. Like, what are your habits? What do you do on a day-to-day? So listen to, sports radio on the way to work. Eat whatever. What do you eat every day? How much time do you spend with your family? How much time do you have a business, or do you just work a regular 9 to 5? Do you look for ways to add more value at your job? Do you look for ways to market better if you have a business? Do you focus on making money, or do you focus on adding value to people? Write down what all the things that you do. How much do you read? How much TV do you watch? Do you watch TV? If you are a man and you're the type of man listening to this show, you don't need to be watching no television, man. Just there's no room for it. At the end of it, I always tell my kids, when you get older, are you going to wish you watched more television? Are you going to look back and be like, man, remember all those times we were sitting down watching those movies and watching those shows? No, you won't. You won't. You're going to remember the time you spent with your brothers and sisters, the time you went out and did this, read that, how many books changed your life, all those things. So write down what you do on the left-hand side and then say, all right, does this match up? Chances are it's most likely not, unless I don't know who you're going to have to be to have it match up perfectly. That's the whole idea of this, is to look at it and say, what are the voids? What do I need to start doing to move me more aggressively to this right side? How would I need to live in order to deserve this on the right side? And when I say deserve it, we're all inherently deserving of a good life. Like, we're all good enough inherently. God made us, and he made us in his image, I believe. But at the end of the day, if you want the things you say you want, you're going to have to do something a little differently. And that's what I mean by deserve it. So are you putting in the work? Are you willing to sacrifice, quote unquote? I don't necessarily like using that word, but are you willing to put certain things to the side and replacing them with other things? That's what you have to do. Do a healthy, thorough reality check, and then go talk to some friends. Sit down with your wife and ask your wife how you show up every day. Ask her what your weaknesses are, and feel your heart start beating fast, and watch that ego start creeping up, and get in the habit of start doing that consistently. And that's going to develop some real confidence, some real strength. When you can hear your wife tell you your weaknesses and listen to it and appreciate it and go to work on them, that's when you become a real champion.
Man, it's going to be an awesome episode. Love it, man. You touched on so many great things. So tell us about the gift you had for the audience. It's something that you wanted to share.
Absolutely. So I got a 3-part video series. You go to imnotyou.com/Jim Harshaw Jr. or Jim Harshaw Jr. I got a 3-part video series for you. My top 10 book reading list. So top 10 books that have changed my life, as well as a code for you to get one of those books for free on audiobook. So, and there's also a couple other cool things as well. So go to that imnotyou.com/Jim Harshaw Jr. and I'll have those gifts for you.
Awesome. Thanks, man. And for the listener, I will have that link in the action plan as well if you want to refer to that and click over and get that 3-part series. What about a book? Can you recommend a book or a resource that the listener, they love to get some kind of book they can read?
Absolutely, man. I think a great book to start with, man, 50th Law by Robert Greene. It's one of my favorites. I read it all the time. I listen to the book. I read it at least once a year, you know what I mean? And listen to the audio book. It's an awesome book. A great starting point for any man, I feel like, is a good handbook for how to live your life.
It's called 50th Rule?
50th Law by Robert Greene.
50th Law. Okay, cool.
Yep.
And that's good.
Yeah, there's a bunch of books, and you can in my top 10 book list you'll find some others, but I think that book is a great place to start. I feel like every man should own that book.
And talk about reading, man, for the listener, we're doing this interview on Skype, and behind Niyi is just a massive bookshelf with all these books, so it's pretty cool. Niyi, where can the listener find you, learn more about you, check out your website, etc.?
Absolutely. Go to imnotyou.com. I have an incredible coaching program where I take athletes through a 12-week process and turn them into absolute killers on the field or court, and develop that supreme confidence. So you can check me out at imnotyou.com. Also, I have a podcast called the Sports Motivation Podcast where you go listen to my podcast. You get a lot of value from there. It's no fluff. I get straight to the point, and I give very actionable, practical things similar to what Jim does. That's why I love it. I mean, practical dude. You're talking about action steps and what to do and giving them actual resources. That's similar to what I do on my podcast as well. So go check that out, and that's where you can find me.
Excellent. I have links to all that good stuff in the action plan for the listener. So JimHarshawJr.com/action. And until next time, just like when you were an athlete, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success. Wrestling with Success is a member of the Athlete on Fire podcast network. Check out all of our shows at athleteonfire.com/podcasts.